If you ever thought silence was harmless, think again. Because in a school that seemed peaceful on the outside, there were cries for help that never made a sound. A girl dragged into the shadows, a video that was thought to be lost forever, and one person reborn, carrying the weight of painful memories to expose it all. In this episode, Celeste is no longer the silent one. She's the spark, the hand on the filled jug. And when truth speaks, no one can look away.
I used to think the most painful cry for help was a scream, but it's not. The most painful sound is silence. The silence after a slap no one saw. The silence when a girl curls up in a corner, hands over her mouth so no one can hear her sobs. The silence when everyone turns away, pretending nothing happened. And the next morning, all of Westbrook High fell dead, quiet. Not the kind of silence from exam exhaustion, but the kind that stretches tight like a violin string, ready to snap. A kind of silence that comes when the truth has just begun to surface, and no one dares to face it yet. I stepped into the main hall just as the class bell rang. Hundreds of footsteps dispersed into different directions, but this time, some of them turned to look at me. Not openly, not with hatred, but with hesitation, confusion, and fear. I could feel every beat of my heart echoing in my chest like a drum in a cathedral. Each step I took struck against the mask of silence that had lingered for years. I saw someone's hand clench their backpack strap. A boy turned his head too fast, his hair whipping around. A group of girls nervously broke apart, their eyes dodging the shadow I cast. I knew why. Because that clip, the one where Kira got drenched in water, had her clothes torn and was shoved to the floor in the locker room, was now in the hands of every parent. It wasn't gossip anymore. It wasn't a torn diary entry. It wasn't too sensitive to bring up. It was image, sound, undeniable truth. Every phone that received that link was a blade. A blade slicing through the polished shell they'd wrapped around each other. A slap to the fake pride of this so-called prestigious school. And me, I was the one holding the blade. Not for blind revenge, but because if I didn't do it, no one would. I remember Kira once stood where I was now. This same hallway, same light cutting through the windows like sharp glass. But back then, no one looked at her. Today, everyone saw me. And I told myself, good. Look closely. Let your silence shatter. Morning, at classroom, Daisy sat slumped over her desk, hair falling over half her face. Her eyes were swollen red, her whole body curled up like a cornered rabbit. Crystal still showed up to class, makeup perfectly done, but her trembling hands betrayed her. They shook as she opened her lunchbox, powder-perfect mask cracking with every small movement. I stood at the bulletin board. Beside me, Noah stood silently. A new notice had been pinned UCAN emergency meeting from the parent council and school board, scheduled for tonight at the town hall auditorium. I smiled faintly. When the truth starts to speak, no layer of lipstick can paint over it fast enough. Recess at Westbrook High was usually loud and crowded, but not today. Today, laughter was strangled between nervous whispers. Clusters of students, once inseparable, now sat scattered, speaking in hushed tones, glancing at me like I was a character from a drama they'd just watched. Autumn was creeping in. Faded golden sunlight blanketed the grass and stone benches. A light breeze carried the scent of falling leaves and the faint sound of turning pages. But I didn't care about the fake serenity, because I could feel it, the shift. From the far side of the courtyard, Grace appeared. Her short blonde hair swayed gently in the breeze, the ivory, white school uniform looking like it stepped out of an academy catalog. In her hand was a brand new bottle of organic water, the cap still sealed, as if she had no purpose except to coincidentally pass by. But I knew, Grace never did coincidence. Her eyes scanned the crowd, then landed on me, a swift glance, smooth and practiced, like she was still deciding whether to come closer. But of course, she did. Grace always knew exactly when to show up, just enough to make an impression. "Celeste," she said, her voice soft like butter melting on toast. "Are you okay?" I turned to face her, eyes locked on her pale blue ones, the ones that always played their part to perfection. I smiled, flat. "Perfectly fine," I said with a nod. Then tilted my head slightly, as if idly curious. "And you, what did you think of the clip?" Grace faltered. It was just a fraction of a second, but I caught it. Her eyes darkened, lips pressed into a tight line. And then, like flipping a switch, she snapped back into that eerily perfect composure. Her head tilted slightly, lips curling into a heartbreakingly fake smile. "It was horrible," she whispered, just the right amount of strain in her voice to sound empathetic. "No one deserves to be treated like that." "Yeah," I replied, eyes never leaving her face. Especially when their best friend just stood there, watching, then turned away. I took half a step closer. No threats, no raised voice. Just a direct gaze, sharp enough to cut without sharpening. "Some people are like that." Grace didn't move, didn't deny it. She knew I wasn't talking about Crystal. She knew I was testing her. And I knew Grace wasn't innocent. She never laid a hand on anyone. But her silence was calculated to the second. The wind stirred, lifting old test papers from beneath the stone bench. Grace's eyes flickered. And in that flicker, I saw more than fear. I saw strategy. A quiet calculation. How much does she know? How far has she gone? Should I try to befriend her again? Or prepare to fight? In Westbrook High Auditorium, the air was tense like a tightened string. A harsh spotlight lit the podium, casting a cold circle of light in the otherwise dim hall. Every seat was filled. Whispers rippled like undercurrents, bouncing off the wooden walls and returning as a rhythm of unease. The parents looked at me, some with shock, some with confusion, and a few quiet gratitude. The PTA representative held the microphone, both hands trembling slightly. Her voice came through, faint but firm. "We had no idea. Something like this was happening at Westbrook High. The video is real. The locker room, the uniforms, and the students involved have been verified." A heavy pause, like a droplet hitting the surface of a still lake. No one moved. Not a cough, not a murmur. Crystal sat in the front row, frozen like a wax figure in winter. Her back was rigid against the chair, not from pride, but from paralyzing fear. Her hands clamped tightly on her lap, fingers curling in, sharp nails digging into her black uniform skirt. The threads beneath her fingertips had split open, unraveling like the mask she'd worn for so long. Her lips were pressed into a tight, colorless line. Every muscle in her face twitched slightly, struggling to maintain the last shred of dignity under hundreds of eyes. But she knew there was nowhere left to hide. Daisy sat a row behind, yet couldn't disappear. Her face tilted downward, long hair falling like a curtain. But it wasn't enough to hide the trembling of her shoulders, shivering like a bird caught in a storm. She didn't sob, didn't make a sound. Only tear after tear slipped quietly onto the back of her hand, each drop heavy as stone. She didn't wipe them away. She couldn't, because in that moment, she knew no one would reach for her hand again. No more innocent laughter, no more complicit glances. Only silence, heavy, damning silence. Suddenly, a middle-aged mother stood up in the center of the room. "The girl in the video, I used to tutor her." Her voice cracked like stone splitting. "She was such a good kid, she wanted to be a doctor." She choked on the words. "But she's no longer with us." A wave of stillness swept the auditorium. No applause. No objections. Only hundreds of eyes, all turning toward one person. Me. I took a deep breath, then stood. One step at a time, I walked toward the podium. Each click of my heels rang out like a knock on memories no one wanted to revisit. Down below, A student looked up at me, eyes red rimmed. In the last row, an elderly woman folded her hands in prayer. I carried no notes, no speech, only a worn notebook, edges frayed, spine cracking, its pages soaked with blood and tears. My voice was calm, but my eyes hardened like steel. I'm not telling this story to draw tears. I'm telling it because someone once had their voice stolen. They were treated like they didn't exist. I raised the notebook, my hands steady. She once wished someone would see her. Tonight, I stand here for her. I looked straight at Crystal, and beyond her, at everyone who had once walked away. No one saved Kira that day. But today, the truth has saved something else. The belief that justice still exists, even if it's slow, even if it hurts. I bowed my head slightly and stepped down. No applause, but I didn't need it. Because I saw one parent silently wipe a tear. I saw Crystal's shoulders shake, not from crying, but from fear. I saw the elderly woman at the back grip her granddaughter's hand, as if shielding something that had almost been lost. And I knew Kira had been seen. For the first time, and for always.
No one clapped, but Celeste didn't need applause. Because in the teary eyes of a mother, in the trembling grip of a child's hand, and in the flicker of fear on the face of someone once merciless, she knew the truth had finally been seen, that the battle is only beginning. When those who lurk in the shadows feel threatened, they won't stay silent anymore.